Brother invaded my room at night. Now I avoid him and find solace in my boyfriend's family as things finally settle. When it first started, my brother was 15, and I was 17, towards the end of year 2020. This made things complicated as I was an adult when I finally came forward about what was happening, around a year later. I compare the fact that he did not actually rape me or force me to do any sexual acts. What he would do started out as just rubbing my hair while we would watch movies, even with my whole family. This wasn't anything too out of the ordinary or odd because it was something my mom always did for us growing up. Then we would do it for each other when she wouldn't, but I never thought of it as a sexual thing because we're fucking family. Anyway, it started being weird when he would constantly offer to do it and then eventually tried to rub my shoulders. This made me uncomfortable and I told him I didn't want that and that I was okay without anything. I felt at that point that I was just overthinking it and I was in the wrong for making it seem like his intentions were anything but innocent. But oh boy was I wrong. It gave me so much anxiety now when we would watch movies because I was afraid he would try to do it again. And that's exactly what happened. One night I remember we were watching a movie in my room. We grew up close and we were just hanging out, as siblings do. Then he just started rubbing my hair and I told him that I was okay and didn't want it. But he wouldn't stop and said something along the lines of "Don't worry, I don't mind." It made me feel like he was just trying to be a nice brother and I was being unfair. However, it took a turn where he started going for my shoulders again and I kept saying like I only want my hair rubbed, nothing else. He was sitting behind me because I was keeping some distance. But he kept trying to do things and eventually he went under my shirt to massage my back and I went stiff. He would go very far to the left and right and ever so slightly touch the sides of my boobs and act like nothing happened. It was really hard for me to know how to approach this situation and properly speak up for myself. The discomfort I felt was so immense that I felt frozen. I couldn't even pay attention to the movie because I was on full alert trying to make sure he wouldn't keep touching my body. I would press my arms on my side to cover those areas of my body. I also didn't want to make a big deal about it since it seemed like something I was just overthinking because it sounded so simple, or an accident, nothing severe. Therefore, I didn't speak up about it. I just kept trying to play it off and calmly tell him I don't want it. After that, I distanced myself from him a bit to avoid his behavior. But then things, unfortunately, got worse. At that time, I had one of those locks on my door that can just be turned with a coin. Basically, he quietly entered my room in the middle of the night and was inappropriately touching me while I was asleep. I remember waking up but pretending to stay asleep. My way of trying to avoid the situation was turning onto my side and crossing my arms to protect myself, reach that area without it having to be forceful and risk waking me up. He ended up leaving and relocking my door as though to cover his tracks and avoid me ever knowing it happened. This freaked me the fuck out and made me question how many times this may have happened without me knowing. I could not sleep the rest of the night in fear he would return since it was so easy for him to get into my room. I felt like I made the whole thing up, or that it was a dream. My biggest regret was not telling me parents about it when it first made me uncomfortable. But after this I was scared enough that I shared with them that he entered my room, in the middle of the night, while I was asleep. I did not, however, mention the fact that he violated me physically. My hope was that by sharing this information, it would be enough for them to take serious action and make me feel safe, so it would never happen again anyway. I think I was also just in disbelief and it was easier to not accept what was happening, and how terrified I was. They said they were sorry that he violated my space and that it was not okay for him to be in my room without my permission. Apparently his excuse to them was that he couldn't sleep and wanted to check if I was awake to be of company. I felt better at least knowing they were aware and assumed he wouldn't be stupid enough to do it again. It still took me a while to be able to sleep fully again without subconsciously worrying if he would take advantage of me. But it doesn't end there. Fast forward to the summer of 2021, I was now 18 and he was 16, when we found out that our house had mold and asbestos. Therefore, we had to temporarily move out immediately and all stay at our grandparents'. We ended up staying there for a few months before we had to find rental places as it was going to take a long time to fix. During this time at our grandparents', there weren't enough bedrooms to fit us all. There are 7 of us in my family, so some of us had to sleep in the living room. Sometimes we would take turns since the rooms were preferred. But on this particular night of December 12th, I was sleeping on the couch. Similarly to the other occurrence, I woke up to being touched. He was reaching over from behind the couch and I reacted the same way again by acting like I was asleep and trying to resist it. This time, he managed to reach further down my chest. I am still traumatized by the feeling of his fingers trailing down and caressing the sides of my boobs. I felt like I was going to throw up. I wanted to burst into tears. I was in shock. I wanted to scream, and I felt so powerless and mad at myself for not doing anything. He eventually left and I told myself that it could have been worse and at least he didn't fully grab them or was aggressive, right? I was completely downsizing the situation as a way to cope, but the reality was that it was insane and completely unacceptable. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to do something at this point for my own well-being and the fact that I have a younger sister to protect. I saw him as a predator at this point. Of course I stayed up the whole night to keep myself safe, and silently wept as he was sleeping on the ground, not too far away. Once the sun rose I texted my boyfriend that I was very distressed and was afraid to tell him about what had been happening. Mind you, I started dating him that same summer of 2020. But I never told him about the details besides the same thing that my parents knew about him entering my room. He always thought even just that was tremendously weird and said more action should have been taken to make sure I was protected. Anyway, on that day he encouraged me to be honest and that he wouldn't judge me and was there for me. I went outside to call him and confessed everything as shortly as I could. He said he was coming over immediately to pick me up and be there for me. Once he got there I came to his car and he told me he was not leaving until I told my parents because this is very serious. I knew he was right, but it was way easier said than done and I was an emotional mess. He offered to even tell my parents for me to at least have them aware for the time being, for if I needed to leave and have space first. I told him I think I could do it and he told me he would go grab my mom. So she came out to his car and sat inside with me and asked what was wrong. I didn't know what to say at first and to be honest, I don't really remember what I did say. I think I blacked out that experience, but I know I told her the important parts of everything. She said how sorry she was and how she was glad I told her about it and that she had no idea. I was very glad to hear the support and validation that I was not crazy. She told me that they were going to take this very seriously and figure out how to keep us separated for the time being to give me space. They ended up booking hotels for about a week for me to stay in with my mom and younger sister. They were trying to keep the situation discreet though from my grandparents, and my other younger siblings that are twins, at the time 10 years olds boy and girl. We did tell my older brother, now 23, about the news a few weeks later. But that's besides the point. Basically, it felt like something that had to be hidden still and kept private. They played it off by telling them they just needed a new environment for a little. During that first week of keeping space, they talked to us individually trying to figure out more information. This included my experience and some reasonings behind his actions. This is where the tables turned and my brother had ratted me out by confessing he knew I had smoked weed. This was not the first time my parents had caught me and gotten me in trouble for doing so and it was deemed a problem. It ended up taking their attention away from him and focusing on me, telling me that I'm not making very good decision either. They took my phone away meaning no communication with my boyfriend for a time, too. But like how does that compare to this situation at all? The priority of the scenario should have still been focused on me as the victim. It was unfair and I felt like I had lost my support from them and kept away from my boyfriend. After that, they said they couldn't keep doing hotels forever and that I would go back and just have one of the bedrooms to myself. I expressed how very uncomfortable I felt about that idea to even be under the same roof as him. But they promised they would not let it happen again. I basically was stuck as I had no car or place to go, and no money. They've threatened to take away any financial support before, if I do something such as run away, basically anything they disagree with. Although I was an adult I was broke and my boyfriend was still living with his parents. He actually asked if he could share my story with them and I said yes and they were very understanding and offered to let me stay. But since my parents didn't agree, as they have Christian views, even though so do his parents, I was afraid of the repercussions, so I didn't. I felt like I couldn't make my own decisions and like I was in trouble when something terrible happened to me. Then, they found it important for my brother and I to have a discussion, under their supervision. So one day we all went in the backyard and talked about what had happened. I hated it. They said it was good for me to in order to face it and be able to hear from my attacker, my fucking brother. However, I did not even get to hear an apology from him. All I got to hear was him reveal the fact that my previous rapist, from 2 years prior, had sent him a nude of me. He said it happened in January of 2020, and that it made him view me in a sexual way. He also mentioned that he didn't delete the photo immediately, keeping it for about 15 minutes before feeling guilty and finally removing it. This made the situation much worse because now it's even more disturbing that he admitted to inappropriate behavior involving a nude photo of me when I was underage. He also added that I was the closest girl for him to explore his sexual curiosity, among other excuses. But I will never know why the fuck that guy from the past would not only keep it for so long, but send it to my brother after 2 years since he sexually assaulted me. My parents never knew about my story with that guy yet, that he raped me, until after we found out about this and I told them about him. They immediately questioned why would that guy do that? Did you do something recently that made him take revenge? I told them absolutely not and that I hadn't talked to him since. They once again told me they were sorry that it happened to me and they had no idea. They had known I had a sexual past, including sending nudes before, but not that I had lost my virginity to that guy. But it's not like they're over here having me talk to that attacker. But because this is my brother, and their son, they want so bad for us to reconcile and can't accept the fact that I could cut off contact with him forever if I want to. A little bit later, Christmas was coming up and they decided to go to Big Bear last minute and were forcing me to go. But I fought against it because the last thing I wanted to do was go pretend to have a good time bonding with my family, including my brother. They somehow let me stay, but not without being very angry and resentful. While they were there I had therapy and I was honest about what happened. She told me that legally she had to report it, but that she was letting me know since I'm an adult, and it was up to me if I wanted to warn my parents. She said that it was tricky because I was an adult and he's younger so nothing might come of it, but it was more out of precaution for my younger sister. Basically what happened though was CPS, Child Protective Services, ended up doing a surprise visit to the house while they were in Big Bear. I wasn't here either though because we still weren't staying in the house yet. So I didn't know that happened until my mom told me, all upset and sobbing, that they had left her a voicemail about it. She told me how horrifying that is as a mother to have CPS called on them and how that seemed extreme and unnecessary. I told her it wasn't my fault and I didn't tell them to do it, but that my therapist legally had to report it. Overall, this situation has been entirely fucked and I could go into so much more detail. But since then, I eventually got my phone back and some freedom. Finally got a car a few months later, too. Thinking I was starting out 2022 better. That car ended up getting totaled a month after that because a tow truck crashed into me while I was fully stopped in traffic. In addition, we started hopping from rental places during the majority of this last year until our house was finally ready in September. If you're wondering where my brother is, he's currently about 20 feet away from me in his bedroom while I'm in the same room where he first hurt me. Oh, but don't worry because I have a more secure lock now that someone can't just get into with a coin. I haven't talked to my brother since the whole situation is my choice, and it's been a little over a year now. We've both been in therapy and apparently he's been doing really good and has dedicated the last 3 months towards really working on himself and talking through everything. I guess he also wrote me a letter recently that his therapist suggested he reads to me at some point in order for him to complete his healing process since he is getting ready to move on. Oh, but no rush with your process of course, just so you're aware. Wow. I'm so glad his healing process has been so fast. Good for him. Yeah right, like fuck this shit has been so difficult for me as I am literally within the same space as him every day still. Thankfully nowadays I spend every day at my boyfriend's and only come home at night to sleep when everyone's asleep, and typically leave by noon. Either for school or just to get the hell away from here without having to pay rent. I still love my parents and I'm sure it is hard for them to understand everything as well. I think they mean well but tend to handle situations in a very bad way. For example, they also told me during that December after finding out that I have to wear a bra or I can't live with them. They said that part of my job is to make it easier for my brother to not sexualize me. I seriously can't believe my own life sometimes. Like they also spun it around where, because I sent that nude to that guy, that was my choice to give that power to someone else. Inevitably it ended up getting to my brother and that was the consequence of doing so. I don't get how they wouldn't assume maybe why I don't ever want to be here, like that should be pretty obvious. I can't even be comfortable in my own room. Not to mention that 8 months before COVID they impulsively decided to up and move across the country to Tennessee. That only lasted for a short 7 months, and for 4 of those they locked me in my room. Legit I was not able to leave the house except on Wednesday nights for young adult church group. They also threatened to send me to a psych ward or even an all-girls school, because they didn't know what to do with me since I was smoking weed and hooking up with guys. Little did they know that I was raped and wanting some control over other sexual experiences and also was undiagnosed with a lot of mental illnesses, including bipolar disorder. And I thought all of that was my worst problem and trauma. Especially to move back here after that, super excited, and have COVID hit a month later. Leading to everything spiraling down into this. I can't wait till the day I move out, which may come sooner than later, because surprise. My parents just told me last week that they are selling the house since they can't afford it anymore. Do they have any idea where they're going? No. Am I going to go with them? No, not again, I'll figure out a way to stay. They said it could mean going to New York for all they know at this point. Also it's happening by June, so in a few months, and I'll be 20 in July. It's been a crazy journey so far and I'm hoping 20 will be a fresh new start to a new decade. I still deal with the repercussions of chronic anxiety, depression, OCD, ADHD, bipolar disorder, and probably BDD. I have been taking medication for everything besides the last one for a while now, and it has definitely made a difference for me. Those have been my priority to face, but I have been recognizing more recently the effects of my obsession of my body. I have been pinpointing as to why, but it would come as no surprise due to the physical scrutiny and judgment I feel from my family. The timeline adds up from when I started wearing baggy clothes, after what happened with my brother, and being told I have to wear a bra. Not to mention that I'm basically responsible for being sexualized. This has made me overthink that everyone in public views me that way as well. Thankfully I am still happily with my boyfriend of now over 2.5 years and he has been my rock through everything. Him and his family's support I swear has been my lifesaver as I didn't know that level of comfort was possible. I am able to talk about reality and my feelings with them and feel supported and validated. It is hard to accept the loss of what I wish my family could be and never will. Also the grief of losing my brother as a result of being betrayed and violated. But my goal is to focus on myself and my own healing journey by making my own decisions for what I need in my life. I know this is a very long description and heavy overlook of my past few years. I also know other people go through some terrible experiences as well. But just typing this out has helped me a little bit, even though I have therapy too. I just couldn't sleep tonight because I've been obsessing about my physical appearance too much. To the point where I feel out of control and sick to my stomach. I convince myself I've gained weight or I look worse somehow all of a sudden. I can't stop touching the areas like my thighs and stomach to check that they're not randomly more fat. I also will randomly, subconsciously, suck in my stomach for whatever reason even while laying down. Don't even get me started on checking myself in the mirror constantly or feeling like I can feel my clothes too much. It's gotten worse where I'll go to a bathroom stall and set up my camera to take a video of all the angles of how I am looking, and what people see. Tonight just reminded me about all of this and what I've been through and honestly that I'm proud of myself for fighting through it. There have been many times I've wanted to give up and would inflict harm and pain on myself. But I really want to start gaining my own power back and rejoice in the beauty of life. I also want to be more kind to my body and show my gratitude towards it, by not being so hard on myself or needing/seeking perfection. I want to live for myself. Update 1. I didn't know what the next few months were going to hold, but I definitely didn't expect them to be this absolutely weird cocktail of hope, stress, family chaos, and, believe it or not, some wild closure in the most surprising ways. So, here's the big update. Let's start with the house, because, yes, it is really happening. My parents did actually list the place, and showings have been going on for weeks. It's like every couple days now I wake up and there are total strangers in the living room, tramping mud through the entryway, doing that polite grimace people do when they don't know how to acknowledge another human having a meltdown on the inside. I spend most of my actual daytime at my boyfriend's, like always, but there have been so many realtors and inspectors parading through that my room doesn't feel like my own anymore. Which, whatever, it hasn't for a while, but this is like. Even my last stronghold is getting invaded. But here's the really crazy part, with the house up for sale, and my parents' finances genuinely on the brink, my mom finally got honest during one of her late-night kitchen breakdowns. There was zero warning, she just wandered in while I was making ramen at like 2 a.m., looking all hollow-eyed, and starts brushing her hair at the table like she used to when I was a kid. She said, "We should have done more, earlier. I almost dropped the noodle pot. I shouldn't have made you feel like you needed to protect your brother. I don't know how to fix it." For the first time, she actually apologized for her choices, not just the stuff that happened to me. I just nodded and stirred my noodles and didn't cry, but it surprised me how much I needed to hear it. Then she ruined it, immediately followed it up with, "But I hope you can forgive him one day because he's really trying." Old habits die hard. But at least the talk was something. My brother is basically a ghost now. I still live in the same place as him, but we don't cross paths. At all. We don't talk, text, nothing. Supposedly, he joined some youth recovery program through his therapist, something for family healing and accountability. I never wanted to know the details, but my parents love to update me. My dad cornered me a week ago in his oh-so-concerned but awkward dad way in the garage, when I went to look for moving boxes. Instead of talking about logistics, he asked if I'd read the letter my brother wrote me, the one I mentioned before. I hadn't. I didn't want to. But here's the wildest bit, my brother came to my door, the actual, coin-proof door, one afternoon. He knocked. I panicked, but I answered. He stood there, holding a sealed envelope, and said, "I won't be here much longer. I'm moving in with Aunt Rachel in Kentucky." News to me, but whatever, fine. He handed me the letter, said you never have to read it. Just wanted you to have it. Then he left, and honestly, I haven't seen him since. That was 3 weeks ago. Apparently, he really is gone, Aunt Rachel confirmed it, and I guess he's finishing high school there. I still haven't read the letter, but for the first few days after he left, I swear every part of my body felt lighter. I actually danced in my damn room, blasted music through the house. It feels ridiculous, but I felt safer. For the first time in actual years, I slept with the window open and didn't wake up in the middle of the night in a panic. My sleep schedule is still a hot mess, but wow, even being able to relax in my own space is something I didn't remember was possible. Outside the house, stuff got wild in its own way. My boyfriend's parents officially offered me their spare room for as long as I need. When I told them about the house selling and the insane possibility of my parents moving states again, they were almost insistent on me not following my family. We talked about it, a real adult conversation, looking at job ads, rent prices, schools. I'm putting in applications with a local animal shelter and a bakery, my secret dream job, I guess. My boyfriend's mom wants to teach me actual home repair, since, as she says, if you can master a power drill, you're never homeless. She has the most wonderfully savage attitude about my parents and the past. You're not a project to fix. You just get to be now. Therapy has, somehow, gotten a lot more real since my brother left. I stopped ducking out of appointments or tiptoeing around the heavy stuff. We're talking about body image, about all the guilt and self-hate, the weird little compulsions with mirrors and cameras. I broke down once, absolutely ugly crying, telling my therapist how hard I try to forgive myself for all the things I thought I allowed to happen. She told me something I wrote down and carry in my phone notes now: your body is not at fault for other people's choices. Sounds simple, but it hit me hard. I don't know if I believe it most days. But it's working its way in. And my sister, the one I always worried about? I actually got to talk to her, for real, about all of this, not the heavy details, she's still so young. But she shared that she also felt weird around our brother, that she appreciated how I always looked out for her. She cried in my arms and said she's glad I never, ever left. Something about that, about her still feeling safe, made me realize I did do enough. Or at least, I did all I could. Here's the crazy, mundane, beautiful now: I eat dinner almost every night with my boyfriend's family. We take turns picking cheesy shows to hate watch. I started baking again, for the first time since before any of this happened. I wear what I want for breakfast, not worrying who's going to stare at me. I even went thrifting and bought a pair of high-waisted shorts just because I liked the way they made my legs look, which sounds ridiculously small, but you have no idea. I still check the mirror too often, Still feel the whisper of old anxiety, but the voice is quieter, and I fight it off more often than not. The house is supposed to close in less than a month. The boxes in my room are almost all packed now, some going to storage, most going to my boyfriend's, where I'll move in as soon as my parents leave. Yes, it'll be weird. Yes, it's not the dreamy fresh start I want, not yet, but it is a start. My parents are already talking about video calls every night and Christmas plans in New York, but honestly, I'm putting myself first for once. I still haven't read my brother's letter. Maybe I never will. It sits in the bottom of a suitcase, wedged between my journal and the one baby photo I genuinely like. Every day, I stand a bit taller, sometimes figuratively, sometimes literally in those new thrifted shoes. I'm starting to realize the world is so much bigger than the hell I've been trapped in, and maybe, just maybe, some parts of it can be good too. I just turned 20 last week. For my birthday, I made a list of things I want to try before next July, some big, some small, all mine. Baking a croquembouche. Going to a concert. Taking my little sister to the beach. Piercing my ear, again. Doing a photo shoot that actually makes me feel powerful, not afraid. Update 2. I honestly wish I could bottle up the feeling I had the night after my birthday, when I realized, somehow, nobody in the world, not my parents, not my brother, not even my therapist, could decide how the rest of my story goes. Because, buckle up, the universe really decided to test that theory over the next few weeks. First, the house. It finally sold. I was half expecting something to go catastrophically wrong at the last minute, because that's just how my life seems to go, but, surprise, it actually happened. My parents packed up the moving van for New York. There was this slow motion, end of an era vibe, with empty boxes littering every room and my dad arguing about which keepsakes qualified for storage. Spoiler, he kept every single one of his 25-year-old college t-shirts. On the literal morning they left, my mom tried to do a family group hug. My younger siblings were crying, my sister clung onto my hoodie, and my mom just kept brushing hair out of my face, softly, telling me, you know you can always come home. We both knew that wasn't true anymore, but she needed to say it, and I needed to hear it, even if it was a lie. And then, just like that, I was standing in the driveway waving as the U-Haul pulled away, sunlight hitting my face, and for the first time in years, I didn't have to brace myself for who I might see in my hallway, or feel the dread of that lock on my door clicking open. The day was weirdly quiet. I kept thinking I'd feel lost, or like I would break down, but all I felt was this wild, vibrating relief. I sat on the curb in a pile of half-broken moving boxes, drinking cold coffee, and just let the sun bake into my skin. Of course, reality is reality, and I really did have to move in with my boyfriend's family. Which, let's be real, turned out to be its own flavor of chaos. His older brother is taking a gap year, Reed. He games until 3 a.m. and practices drums at midnight, and his mom has very big opinions about folding laundry and labeling leftovers. But honestly, I didn't even care. On my first night there, she made a giant tray of brownies and left me a post-it on my door. We're so glad you're here. Eat a square before you sleep. I ugly cried into the first sticky, chocolate square while watching the dumb baking show where the cookies always collapse. For once, home felt possible. And then came the wild twist I never, ever expected. My brother called. Not texted, not wrote, he called, the first time since his weird Kentucky departure. He left a voicemail. I didn't answer because the number was unknown, and honestly, I panicked. Later I listened to it. He sounded older. Hoarse. He said, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know you probably never will, and I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know, I read a story at my group about how I hurt you. Everyone else hated me for it. I get it. I wish I could fix it, but I'm trying, I swear. There was a pause, then, you're brave. You saved our sister, too. I hope you get happy. That was it. I didn't cry. I didn't feel much, honestly, besides an odd, hollow sense of closure, like a book slamming shut. For the first time since everything broke, I realized my healing was really mine, not someone's assignment or apology or teaching moment. I deleted the voicemail but kept the letter. I still haven't read it, and maybe I never will, but the universe, apparently, wasn't done testing me. About 3 weeks later, my therapist's office called. There was a group therapy opening, all ages, all backgrounds, for survivors trying to reclaim their bodies and self-image. In the past, the thought of being in a room sharing out loud with strangers would have sent me running, but something inside me just said yes. I told my boyfriend, and he said, whatever makes you feel powerful, I'll drive you. I went, hands shaking, but left the session with 5 phone numbers scribbled on a slip of paper, girls, women, even one guy, all who had stories that didn't sound exactly like mine but felt achingly familiar anyway. We laughed about stupid coping strategies. Someone's cat is their therapy potato. I showed off pictures of my disastrous brownies. We talked shame and body stuff and that weird, floaty feeling of almost trusting yourself again. We made a pact. Every month, we'd do something bravely fun together instead of another sad coffee. So 4 weeks ago, I stood with them at our town's ridiculously dorky local fair in a tie-dye t-shirt, eating fried pickles, not even remembering to check my reflection before every selfie. One of the women, she's almost 40, with a daughter my sister's age, helped me get my cartilage pierced at a little booth. I almost chickened out, but she just squeezed my hand and said, "It's your turn to want things." That earring is now my favorite thing I own. Around the same time, I started baking at the shelter, because yes, the animal shelter did hire me, even though my hands shook through the entire interview. Dogs are the absolute best coworkers. They don't ask questions, don't judge, just want to lick your fingers. My favorite is a goofy brown mutt named Peaches, who sits on my feet when I read. Every paycheck, I put $20 aside in a sock under my mattress, savings for the first apartment that's really mine. Maybe in 6 months, maybe in 2 years, but it's happening. That tiny, growing pile of cash feels like freedom. Being 20 so far is a lot, sometimes magical, sometimes messy, and always just slightly more hopeful than I expect. I did most things on my list before the end of summer. I baked a crooked croquembouche that toppled sideways and tasted like heaven anyway. I took my sister to the beach, we raced to the water, and for a sunny, salt-soaked half hour, every bad thing that ever happened just didn't exist. I said yes to a photo shoot with some friends from group therapy, and for the first time, I didn't try to hide my stomach or suck in my cheeks. Life is still full of bumps. Sometimes, my old worries and compulsions creep in. I'll catch myself avoiding mirrors, picking at my clothes, second-guessing if I look safe. Sometimes nightmares still wake me up. But lately, instead of feeling trapped, I just sit in the dark and breathe, remembering the list of things I want that nobody can take away from me now. My boyfriend and I had our first real, adult fight about the future. He wants to move to Portland. I said I'm not leaving the dogs. We worked it out, like real, less traumatized people. His family now considers me one of their own. There's a spot for my mug in the kitchen, and his mom buys my favorite, granola. But the real, unmistakable news is this: my story is finally, beautifully, utterly mine to write. Not as a perfect victim or a tragic girl, but as a messy, wild, terrified, daring, healing, brand new person. Maybe I'll read that letter someday. Maybe I won't. For now, my next steps: finish my application to the technical college, buy a plant I actually keep alive, dance at midnight because no one is listening, and keep living for myself, a little braver, a little louder, more at home in my skin than I've ever dared to hope.